Hey folks, before we start our prayers, we have a really short day today. We've got basically 2 hours. And so I talked to Venerable about a week ago and I said, I would like to tell the story of Ratthapala. And she said, great. Now, when she told this story with all of the embellishments and the teachings and commentary, it took about almost 4 hours. So I'm going to try to do this in 2. And what I want to do is, because it's a beautiful story, I find it really inspiring. And she's done this over years. She's taken something out of the Pali Canon and that has to do with a monastic life, living in monastic community. So let's do our prayers, take some time, bring ourselves into the space. I'll set a short motivation and then I'll unpack this a little bit more on what I hope to share with you today. So once again, if you're thinking about what we had for lunch or what happened yesterday, leave that at the door. Wondering about what's going to happen tomorrow, Daniel and Nicole, let that at the door. And really bring the mind into this ever-changing present moment. And in that ever-present moment, bring to mind the image of the Buddha in the space in front of you. His beautiful body of light, his all-encompassing omniscient mind. I'm sure very pleased with our time here together in exploring monastic life. And then surrounding us, all sentient beings in human form, who have really helped us to create the causes to be here at the Abbey in this moment.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger.
So for the motivation, the Pali Canon is filled with so much wisdom of the Buddha. And a lot of the sutras are about his engagement and relationship with sentient beings. The stories are really, many of them are inspiring and remarkable, and they're not just to entertain and to surprise us, but the sole purpose that the disciples were able to transmit the oral tradition of what happened during the Buddha's life was in order to guide themselves and all future generations. And the inspiring words of the Blessed One, his wisdom, his compassion, his skillful means, and that he met each living being with equanimity and clarity and kindness, whether it was a matted hair ascetic or a Brahmin or a grieving mother or one of his own disciples, hordes of people, villagers from a small town. All the stories really bring a profound light to all that he did. Was his whole purpose in life was to benefit. And so when we look over our lives and we tell our stories, as I did today in the BBC, to try to set the motivation, we're not going for nostalgia. We're not going for trying to get some sort of praise or respect. Oh, what a great story. I can't believe you did that. Or wow. And mm-hmm. Or telling stories about old hurts, old grudges, all unfinished business that just stirs up the waters of anger and resentment. We want our stories to come alive in our practice. What did we learn about ourselves? What can we discard from the stories and the journeys of our life that are just absolutely not helpful, not necessary? But what are some of the wisdoms we gathered and garnered on our journeys to the Dharma and afterwards that will really serve us, that show us what our strengths are, show us what our struggles are, what afflictions our habits are? And so the stories become sort of these milestones in our spiritual life if we hold them with that type of wisdom and that type of compassion. So as we listen to the story of Ratthapala today, really see what the disciples of the Buddha were really trying to understand in this story. What was Ratthapala's journey? What were his struggles, challenges, and finally his great triumph, in order to inspire, to direct, to guide, and encourage all those from now until forever on how to follow the path. And that, what happened to Ratthapala 2,600 years ago is not, the Buddha's teachings are timeless. They don't become obsolete. His guidance, his wisdom, his direction, the practice, the antidotes are the exact same ones that we apply to our own minds now in these modern times. And that's the beauty of the Dharma, that it's timeless. It'll always be precious, always practical, always profound to whoever meets it and takes it into their hearts and minds. And so let's do this not only to garner and gather our own virtue, our own wisdom, but to understand for the long-term goal of awakening, we need to somewhere along the path as we go to garner the same skillful means and wisdom that the Buddha had. And as we will see, the wisdom and the skillful means that Ratthapala had after his journey to arhatship. And so let's do that together in community for the long-term benefit of sentient beings. And in order to do that, maybe become Buddhas for the benefit of all. Okay, story time. Venerable's told a few of the stories from the Pali Canon over the past 20 years now. And she really wants, as she did with the Buddha's life, she tries to embellish it with what would it be like if this was to occur now in modern times? What are the things, bring it up to modern times, what would be similar challenges, struggles, what would we have to overcome? What would be some of the triumphs in our spiritual practice? So she does the same thing with Ratthapala's stories, that she embellishes some of the circumstances and brings them up to modern day. If this was to happen to any of us, what would be the pressures from society? What would be the pressures from family and friends? How would we have to hold that in our own minds as we really followed our aspiration to ordain? And so and we've got this 2 hours here. So what I'm hoping to do, the story is kind of divided into 2 sections. Ratthapala's meeting with the Buddha, his going into the home life, asking for ordination, going to his family, what happened there, what happened afterwards, what happened when he ordained. And then there's sort of a transition where he goes into the garden where he was staying. He meets the king, and there's another whole part of his life in which we find out what was it that the Buddha told him, that he heard the day that the Buddha taught, that propelled him to seek the homeless life. We don't get that till the second part of the story. So at 2:30, I'm hoping to maybe get to the shift, stop for a moment, ask if anybody's got some insights, some observations, anything that resonates about Ratthapala's life that you might be able to find helpful or you feel simpatico with him. And then the second part is when he has this exchange with the king after he visits his family, after he's ordained and attained arhatship. And then there's the unpacking of this beautiful teaching that the Buddha gave him that he then teaches the king, who has some misunderstandings about what monastic life is really about. So that's what I'm hoping to do. We'll see how it goes, folks. I'm going to try to cut this down as much as I can without losing the essence of the story. Okay, so it's called the Ratthapala Sutta. And it's in the Majjhima Nikaya. If you ever want to enjoy yourself, read the Pali Canon. You really get to understand the Buddha a little bit better. You can understand where he was coming from, what he was like, and the people at that time, what they were like. So, thus I have heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was wandering in the Kuru country with a large sangha of bhikshus, and eventually he arrived at a Kuru town called Tulakatita. The Brahmin householders of Tulakatita heard, the recluse Gautama, the son of the Sakyans, has went forth from the Sakya clan, has been wandering in the Kuru county with his large sangha of bhikshus, and has come to Tulakatita. Now a good report of Master Gautama, so his reputation is starting to spread, and it's not through social media, it's not through newspapers, it's through word of mouth, that the Blessed One is accomplished, fully enlightened, perfect in true knowledge and conduct, sublime, knower of the worlds, incomparable teacher of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. Does that sound familiar? To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus God. It comes from the Pali Canon. That's the homage to the Buddha that we say here. These are almost the exact words. He declares this world with its gods, its Mars, its Brahmins, this generation with its recluses and Brahmins, its princes, its people, which he has himself realized with direct knowledge. He teaches the Dhamma, good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, and he reveals a holy life that is utterly perfect and pure. Now it is good to see such arhats. All right, so the word has got around, and they're going to go see the Buddha. So the Brahmin households of Tulakatita went to the Blessed One. Some paid homage to him and sat down at one side. Some exchanged greetings with him, and when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, sat down on one side. Some extended their hands in reverential salutation towards the Blessed One. Some pronounced their name and clan in the Blessed One's presence and sat down. Then the Blessed One instructed, urged, roused, and gladdened them with the talk of the Dharma. So the folks who came to meet the Buddha, all of them had different ideas of who he was. Some of them were very reverential and respectful. Some were going to come in there and tell them who they were. I'm a very famous person. Some were just very informal and very friendly. They really didn't know quite who he was. So he just accepts them all, and he gives them this beautiful talk that really inspires them. Now, at that time, a clansman named Ratthapala, the son of the leading clan in that same Tulakatita, so he comes from like the best of the best, was sitting in the assembly. Then it occurred to him, as I understand the Dharma taught by the Blessed One, it is not easy while living in a home to lead the holy life, utterly perfect and pure as a polished shell. Suppose I shave off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and go forth from the home life into homelessness. So he's thinking this as he's listening to the Buddha's teachings. Then the Brahmin householders, having been instructed, urged, roused, and gladdened by the Blessed One with the talk on the Dharma, delighted and rejoiced, rose from their seats, and after paying homage, they departed, keeping him on their sights, on their right. Okay, so here Venerable kind of just does a little bit of a, she kind of unpacks this, and she's, okay, Ratthapala is sitting in this teaching, and he's starting to weigh the disadvantages of what he's experiencing right now, and what might it be like to lead the homeless life. It is difficult as a layperson at home to practice, okay? So he's already looking at that. He's trying to look at the disadvantages, the family, the job, the responsibilities, get married, have a family, you have children. And Venerable brings this up to modern times of the responsibilities of people who decide to practice in the lay life. You get married, you have a family, you buy a house, you have a job so you can contribute to the family's well-being. Your kids want a lot of things, including good education. Who knows when they're going to leave home? They might stay with you until they're 40. There's a lot going on in the lay life. And she says, even in the best of circumstances, let's say you're happily married, and 10 years later your spouse is in a car accident, or they're diagnosed with cancer. And before you know it, you are a widower with 3 teenage children. So this is where she's thinking about, if you want to look at the disadvantages of lay life, she says, think about the possible scenarios that we've heard, that we've seen, and that we have read about in lay life and what the difficulties are. On the other hand, homeless life is the ordained life, and it's not just about changing clothes, going back to life as usual. We totally change the whole way in which we approach the family. Life is now with the Dharma. And a lot of times we've seen it in our community and elsewhere that parents have a really hard time in the beginning with this. They think we're a cult, they freak out, because when we change and turn our minds to the Dharma, we have turned their life upside down. All of their dreams, all their hopes for us are now up for grabs. Family dynamics change, we don't go to gatherings, we don't go to holidays so much. And even if we stuck around and did everything they wanted, our parents generally are never going to quite be happy. That's the role of parents, keep the expectations high, keep the kids on their toes. And so Ratthapala is thinking about this. And Venerable, at this point, she says, for those of us who are at exploring monastic life right now, she says, I don't want to sugarcoat things. I'm not giving you Dharma light. And some of the things that you've heard from her in the past week might be a little bit hard to handle if you're fairly new to hearing things in this way. She says, okay, if somebody asks her in EML, can I practice the Dharma living a lay life? Ratthapala might have asked that himself. Can I continue to practice the way the Blessed One has said if I continue going the way I'm going? And she says, sure, find a Buddhist partner, raise Buddhist kids. But she doesn't go there. She's not going to tell you that. She's going to tell you the benefits of monastic life, and she's not going to sugarcoat the difficulties of being a lay practitioner. It's possible, but it's hard. In fact, there was a young man who came here that after one of these talks, he said that her talk about marriage was so awful, he could hardly stand it because all she did is just diss it. And there was a woman that was so attached to her mother that she just wanted to run out the room after the talk on the disadvantage of being attached to your parents. So Venerable she's giving you the monastic mind perspective here, okay? So, and Ratthapala is looking at that right now. So then he goes to the Blessed One and he says, Venerable Sir, as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is not easy while living in a home to lead the holy life, utterly perfect and pure as a polished shell. Venerable Sir, I wish to shave off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robes, and go forth from the home life into homelessness. I would receive the going forth under the Blessed One. I would receive the full admission. And the first thing that the Buddha says is, have you been permitted by your parents to go forth from the homeless life into homelessness? All right, this is his first question. And what happened here back then in the beginning when the Buddha would go out and teach, and he'd say, come O bhikkhu, to anybody who was just right there saying, I want to ordain. In the beginning, he basically took everybody, not realizing as time went on that some of these people were caretakers of parents, some people were caretakers of children, and that he said it just totally threw the family into chaos. So he decided that, to keep the relationship with the family, to keep things settled so the family was all on the same page, that he asked perhaps more the younger ones than the ones that were in their 50s, 60s, long past, children and parents, to go to their family and ask if they could ordain. So Ratthapala said, "No, Venerable Sir, I've not been permitted by my parents." And then the Buddha says, "Ratthapala, Tathagatas do not give the going forth to anyone who does not have his parents' permission." All right, the culture there was it was so new that they said, let's settle the family. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page. So he says, "Venerable, I will go see my parents, get their permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness." So then the clansman Ratthapala rose from his seat, paying homage to the Buddha, departed, and went to his parents and said, "Mother and father, as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is not easy while living in a home to lead the holy life, utterly perfect and pure as a polished shell. I wish to shave off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robes, and go forth from the home life into homelessness. Give me permission to go forth into the homeless life." When he said this, his parents said, "Dear Ratthapala, you are our only son." You could be the only daughter, eldest daughter, the only one that isn't married, whatever you want to put in there, you can assert yourself. "Brought up in comfort, you know nothing of suffering, dear Ratthapala. Even in case of your death, we would lose you unwillingly. So how would we give you our permission for you to go forth from the home life into homelessness while you are still living? No." Second time, "Mother and father, as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is hard to live the life of a layperson. I want to shave off my hair and beard, go forth, please give me your permission." They look at him and say, "Honey, what would our friends say? I mean, Mary and David have got a son who's now a stockbroker. Their daughter's a doctor. We've got people who are running companies. Their kids are millionaires. What am I going to say when I say my son's a renunciate? How is that going to land? I mean, I really have to worry about our reputation as a family. We are the most powerful clan and Tula Takita, and I don't want that to be tarnished. No." And then the third time, "Mother and father, I really see that lay life is not where I have the best way to practice. Please give me permission." And they say, no, we have, no, just get out of it. This is just a passing fad. You'll get over it. Calm down. No way. We're not going to let you do this. And so what he does then is he lays down on the bare floor saying, "Right here I shall either die or receive the going forth. I'm not moving. Die or give me permission to lead the homeless life." So then they up the ante a little bit more. "Dear Ratthapala, you are our only son, dear and beloved. You have been raised in comfort, brought up in comfort. You know nothing of suffering. Get up, dear Ratthapala, eat, drink, amuse yourself. While eating and drinking, amusing yourself, you can be happy, enjoying sensual pleasures, and make merit at the same time. We do not permit you to go forth from the home life into homelessness. Even in the case of your death, we would lose you unwillingly, so how can we possibly give you permission to go when you're still alive and well?" So what they're saying right here is, okay, no. You have all this money. You have investments. You could start your own company. You could start your own startup company. You could get investors. You could use the money that you have wisely and become very, very successful. You could give to charities. You could start monasteries. You could start Dharma centers with cafes and restaurants. People would come by the millions. You have the possibility. But please, you have so much to enjoy, and you're so young. It's just a waste of time. Please, Ratthapala, don't do this. This is crazy thinking. "No, I will lay here. Either you give me permission or I will die where I'm lying here." All right, so mom and dad are like, okay, three times. They're getting a little desperate. So then they go to his friends. Okay, he's got a whole entourage. He's a very popular young man. He's got a lot of friends. Dears, the clansman Ratthapala has lain down on the bare floor, saying, right here I shall either die or receive the going forth. Come, dears, go to the clansman Ratthapala and say to him, friends Ratthapala, you are your parents' only son. And they give him basically the same things that they told him, coming from a different voice. You are our beloved. You've been raised in comfort, brought up in comfort. You know nothing of suffering. Please, enjoy. You can generate merit. Just don't do this crazy thing. So they said, please, friends, he loves you. You're close to him. You know him well. See if you can convince him. Then the clansman's Ratthapala's friends went to him and said, dear Ratthapala, your parents say you are the only son, dear and beloved, you've been raised in comfort, brought up in comfort, you know nothing of suffering. Ratthapala, get up, eat, drink, amuse yourself. While you're eating, drinking, amusing yourself, you can be happy, enjoying the sensual pleasures. You've got them in spades and making merit at the same time. Your parents will not permit you to go forth into the homeless life. Come on, Ratthapala, this is like not going to work. So they have to go through second round, same time, remain silent, nothing. Third time, silent, nothing. Laying there on the ground, they just go, oh my God, what can I do with this guy? So they go back to mom and dad and say, mother and father, the clansman Ratthapala is lying down on the bare floor still. We were not successful. Right here I shall either die or receive the going forth. Now, and then they say to the parents, they say, now, if you don't give him permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness, he will die there. We know Ratthapala. Once he makes up his mind, he's stubborn, he's bullheaded. He wants what he wants when he wants it. If he wants the homeless life, he's going to get the homeless life or he's going to die. But if you give him permission, here's their strategy. You will see him after he has gone forth. And if he does not enjoy the going forth, what else can he do then but return home? So give him your permission. Go forth from the home life into homelessness. He's a rich kid. He's a softy. He likes getting his way. He likes nice things. They're going to tell him to clean the toilets, do the laundry, wash the dishes. He's going to last maybe about a week. So why don't you give him, and he won't make it. He's going to come home. We can almost bet on it. And so they told the parents thought about it and said, okay, with one stipulation, that he has to come home and visit us. Once he receives, they give the permission, but say he has to come and visit his family. Okay. Then they went to him, told him, get up, Ratthapala, your parents permit you to go forth from the home life into homelessness, but when you have gone forth, you must visit your parents. The clansman Ratthapala got up, and when he had regained his strength, it never says how long these things are, maybe a few days, maybe he was on the ground for a few weeks, no peeing, no eating, no drinking. He might have needed some time to get some food in his system, do a little bit of exercise and getting some water. Then he went to the Blessed One, who was still in Tulakatita. He had gone there with his big Sangha of bhikshus. He sat down to one side and said, Venerable Sir, I have my parents' permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness. Then the Blessed One gave him the going forth. Then the clansman Ratthapala received the going forth under the Blessed One, and he received the full admission. So not long after that, after he had received the full admission, maybe a half a month had gone by, that the Blessed One and everybody that had stayed at Tulakatita, as long as the Blessed One had decided, set out to wander back to Sravasti. Wandering by stages, they eventually arrived at Sravasti, and there they lived at Sravasti in Jedda's Grove in Ratthapinikas Park. So Ratthapala went with the Blessed One back to Sravasti. I have no idea how long this took, where Tulakatita was in relationship to the main place where the Buddha and the Sangha spent many of their rains retreats. He did a lot of his teachings at Sravasti, which is one of the reasons why we have Sravasti Abbey for the name here, because it's where the monks and nuns both practiced at Sravasti. Before long, so once again, there's never quite an indication how long this took. It could have been 12 years, it could have been 3 months. Dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the Venerable Ratthapala, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge here and now, entered upon and abided in that supreme goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home life into homelessness. He directly knew, birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had been done has been done, there is no more coming to any state of being, and the Venerable Ratthapala became an arhat. Okay, so if it only took a little bit of time, chances are he did a lot of work, many, many lifetimes. Venerable, at one point in the story, she said 12 years, and then later on when she was reviewing the story, she said it probably didn't take him that long. So now he's an arhat. Okay, so he's cleansed his mind. He meditated on the emptiness of the selflessness, and he was probably inferential first, the conceptual understanding of emptiness, and then a direct realization. He cleansed all the afflictive obscurations. He was really set on this very, very clear and noble path. So then he went to the Blessed One and, paying homage to him, said, "Venerable Sir, I wish to visit my parents." Okay, so he's going to keep his parents' wish if I have the Blessed One's permission. The Blessed One penetrated mentally the thoughts in the Venerable Ratthapala's mind when he knew that the clansman Ratthapala was incapable of abandoning the training and returning to the low life. He told him, "You may go, Ratthapala, at your convenience." Okay, this is a smart teacher. Venerable does this. She doesn't let us go home until she thinks we're going to not freak out and go to the movies and go have a beer. So she will, which is why the anagarkas don't go home for the first year. The novice, she really want to keep you close to home because we're still vulnerable to the ways of our family, what our dance was with the family and the parents. We all have roles in our families, and it's tempting not to fall back into the old ways if we haven't got ourselves strong in our precepts and our practice. And so the Buddha saw this, but saw now that he's an arhat, he will have no problem going back to mom and dad and visiting them. So then Venerable Ratthapala rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, he departed, keeping him on his right. He then set his resting place in order, taking his bowl and outer robe, set out to wander towards Tulakatita. Now there lived in Tulakatita the king Karavya, Migasira's garden. So the kings have gardens that they tend and have picnics and feasts and things like that, and entertain nobility. So then when in the morning he dressed, taking his alms bowl and outer robe, went into Tulakatita for alms. As he was wandering for alms from house to house in Tulakatita, he came to his father's house. Any guesses? What's going to happen? Huh? No, not yet. Any other possibilities? He's going to his parents' house. Sit. That's part of the deal. That's part of the deal. Now, on that occasion, the Venerable Ratthapala's father was sitting in the hall of the central door having his hair dressed. Curled, braided, put in a turban, I'm not sure, but When he saw the Venerable Ratthapala coming in the distance, okay, he's still a distance away, our only son, dear and beloved, was made to go forth by these bald-pated recluses. Then at his own father's house, the Venerable Ratthapala received neither alms nor a polite refusal. Instead, he received only abuse. So his father couldn't even recognize him. So he just laid into him about worthless, lazy, you stole our son, you good-for-nothings. He abused him, just looking at him and saying, you took our son. Our son is lost to us because of you people. Not a happy father. So then Ratthapala goes away. What to do? But a slave woman belonging to one of the relatives was about to throw away some old porridge. Seeing this, the Venerable Ratthapala said to her, "Sister, if that stuff is going to be thrown away, would you be willing to give it to me and put it in my bowl?" As she was doing so, she recognized, the people that work for you are a lot more observant than the people that they're working for. She said, "I noticed his hands, his feet, and his voice." She knew right away that it was Ratthapala. So she went to the lady, his mother, and said, "My lady, your Lord's son, Ratthapala, has arrived. Gracious, if what you say is true, you are no longer a slave." All right, mom is over the moon. Then she went to the father and said, "Please, no householder, they say that the clansman Ratthapala has arrived." So Ratthapala is sitting there eating the old porridge by the wall, by the family shelter there. His father went to him and said, "Ratthapala, my dear, surely you shouldn't be eating old porridge. Is this not your own home to go to? And Ratthapala says, well, how can I have a householder when I have gone forth from the home life into homelessness? We are homeless householder. He's not even calling him dad. He's calling him householder. A little bit of a, dad, I'm not sure, you're not my father the way you think you are anymore. We went to your house, so he must have gone with a number of other bhikshus, but we received neither alms nor polite refusal. Instead, we received only abuse. So now the father's putting these pieces together. Oh, the one that I had insulted was my son. Come, dear Ratthapala, let us go to the house. Enough, householder, my meal for today is finished. Then Ratthapala, please consent to accept tomorrow's meal. And he said, I will come tomorrow. Okay, here's where the strategies start. Mom and dad aren't going to give up. Then, knowing that the Venerable Ratthapala had consented, the father went back to his own house where he had gold coins and bullion made into a large heap and covered with mats. Then he told the Venerable Ratthapala's former wives. See, we see this a lot in the Pali tradition, is that Indian men had many wives. I guess sometimes they just left and went going forth and didn't even say goodbye. So he had a number of wives, and he said, adorn yourself with ornaments in a way that Ratthapala found you most dear and lovable. Bring out the good stuff. Make yourself as seductive, the perfumes, the henna, whatever. Just really, make yourself just gorgeous. When the night ended, the Venerable Ratthapala's father had good food of various kinds. So he probably had some pizza, he probably had some, tofu skins and big salads and chocolate chip and ice cream, the best microbrew or whatever, Ratthapala liked, and was going to prepare it so that Ratthapala would just go, oh gosh, I forgot how wonderful it was to be here. All right, Ratthapala, it is time. The meal is ready. So taking his bowl and outer roll, went to his own father's house, sat down on the seat made ready. Then his father had the pile of coins and bullion uncovered and said, dear Ratthapala, this is your maternal fortune. Your paternal fortune is another, and ancestral fortune is yet another. Dear Ratthapala, you can enjoy the wealth and make merit. Come then, dear, abandon the training. Return to the low life. Enjoy the wealth and make merit. So this is where, his father is just, you can do anything. This is your entire inheritance. I'm giving it to you all right now. I'm not going to wait until I die. I'm not going to wait until you get older. I'm giving you everything. You can do whatever you want, and you can make merit. Just think of the charity, the NGOs you could start, the starving people in India that you could feed. You can do so much with this money. And Ratthapala is just like, but what he says instead to his father, he says, householder, not father, if you would follow my advice, then have this pile of gold, coins, and bullion loaded on carts, carried away to be dumped midstream into the river Ganges. Why is that? Because, householder, on account of this, there will arise for you sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. We know what happens when we're attached to the happiness, whether it comes in gold bullion or it comes in investments or IRAs or big houses. We know that we're all going to have to separate from it, that we're going to be, the hell of big houses, the hell of big cars, the hell of computers, the hell of vacation homes, the hell of whatever. We know that that's what samsara brings. So then, just to add a little bit more drama onto the situation, the wives come forward in their beautiful saris and their perfume and their anklets and bracelets, clasping his feet, and say to him, what are they like, my Lord's son, the nymphs for whose sake you lead the holy life? We do not lead the holy life for the sake of nymphs, sisters. He called us sisters. Our Lord's son, Ratthapala, called us sisters. They cried, and right there they fainted. The last thing a beautiful young wife wants to be called by her husband is sister. So then Venerable Ratthapala told his father, householder, if there is a meal to be given, then give it. If don't, stop harassing us. Eat then, dear Ratthapala, the meal is ready. Then with his own hands, the Venerable Ratthapala's father served and satisfied him with the various kinds of the most delicious foods that Ratthapala loved. Then Ratthapala, having eaten, had put his bowl away and stood up and uttered these stanzas. So here Venerable says that one of the things that happened a lot in those days because of the dependent arising was that when the laity offered food dana, lunch, and so forth, that after the meal was over, then the Sangha would teach, give some sort of teachings, give some sort of advice, counsel. And so this is what Ratthapala says to his family. I'm not sure if I was one of his wives, whether I could be able to handle this, but it's all about that. Behold a puppet, here pranked out, decked out, a body built up out of sores, sick, an object for concern where no stability abides. Behold a figure here pranked out with jewelry and earrings too, a skeleton wrapped up in skin, made attractive by its clothes. Its feet adorned with henna dye and powder smeared upon its face. It may beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the further shore. Its hair is dressed in eightfold plaits, and unguent smeared upon its eyes. It may beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the further shore. A filthy body well adorned, like a new painted unguent pot. It may beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the further shore. The deer hunter sent out the snare. That's his dad. But the deer did not spring the trap. He ate the bait, enjoyed the lunch, and now departs, leaving the hunters to lament. And then he leaves. So at this point, this is where the transition is. And I want to I'm cruising here, so we might be able to actually finish this story. But any thoughts? What was the initial, as you were hearing this whole little story unfold? What's your empathy for Ratthapala? Maybe your empathy for his parents? Confusion about how this is happening? Any thoughts of that came up? I'll start with Nicole and then Andrea, or Andrea first and then Nicole.
I have been told that I am too soft for monastic life. And that monastics work really, really, really hard.
And then? So that is a genuine concern for you, that you can't.
Yes, I actually thought I wouldn't make it through EML.
And here you are.
Here I am. So thank you, Venerable Pelge, for your beautiful motivation. Where is she? On discouragement.
Yeah.
That was a very timely reminder.
Okay. So once again, his friends thought he was soft. And he was stronger than they thought. And I think that's something that we all learn when we start practicing the Dharma, that we don't think we have it in us to practice and do what we need to do. And we find it's not hard, it's stronger. It's not, it's not like you're in fact, the Dharma softens you. Because if you're going to generate bodhicitta, you've got to have a mind that's soft and clear and open to all the people that we come in contact with. We can't be hard towards them. So the softness is more like maybe indulgent, the kind of life that he had, or kind of life that some of us have, that there's just so many sense pleasures that we get lost in them and don't want to bother. It's almost like a laziness. This softness is a laziness.
So it struck me that they were saying that Ratthapala was soft and that he wouldn't last in the homeless life, but what he was doing to convince them was anything but soft, depriving himself of, the food and water and just laying there and dying. Like he was really going to do it, and yet they thought still, even though he was doing that he would go forth into that life and then decide it was too hard and come back. There's some irony in there.
Some irony for sure. For sure. Anybody else? Sid.
Reminds me when I told my mom of my interest in monastic life, she was like, "Oh, well, you've just never had a healthy relationship. Oh, like you can do so much good in the world though, like in the community." And it just reminded me, like she was giving me reasons the same way his parents were giving him reasons.
You could generate a lot of merit and have a very comfy life and do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And once again, looking back on my life too, and maybe some of the monastics here, is that they means well, dear. We can always say that about our parents. They only knew what they knew, what succeeded for them, what failed for them, and they really want their children to be able to do that and even go beyond that. So they means well, even though sometimes they really try to interfere with our deeper callings of life. Yeah, but it's not out of really wanting to harm us, but they just don't know. Okay, so now that's the first part where he's kind of settled things at home. And he goes back to the Mijikara garden and sits down at the root of a tree for the day's abiding. Are folks okay for continuing the story and finding out what happens?
I just want to add something like when you read many sutras, it's not always, the tone isn't always like super harsh like that. It depends on who's involved. Like there's some sutras, and in one sutra, one father wants to give his daughter to the Buddha, and the Buddha says like, I wouldn't touch her with a stick. She has this filthy body, like anyway, and all the stuff. So when he talks to people who are very arrogant from like high castes, and he perceives that, then he breaks them very, very often. They would call them like householders and blah, blah, blah. But also when he speaks about with people of low caste, he can bring so much kindness and softness. So it really depends on like who's involved in the story, who they are talking to, and what's most beneficial for them to hear. So I would guess that this family was very wealthy and arrogant, and they thought that they could buy him. So he had to kind of be really harsh and direct with them because of that.
Yeah. You really see the Buddha's skillful means as you read some of the stories. The one of the grieving mother with carrying the dead child around is one of the most beautiful stories of compassion that the Buddha ever had an exchange with. Okay, so now this is the second part. We get to find out what it was that the Buddha taught that day that inspired Ratthapala to go into the homeless life. I always get the homeless life. Even now I'm homeless. Okay, then the king Karavya addressed his gamekeeper, said, "Good gamekeeper, tidy up the Magachira garden so that we may go to the pleasure garden and see a pleasing spot." "Yes, sire," he replied. Now, while he was tidying up the garden, the gamekeeper saw the venerable Ratthapala seated at the root of a tree for the day's abiding. When he saw him, he went to the king Karavya and said, "Sire, the garden has been tidied up, but the clansman Ratthapala is there, the son of the leading clan of this same Tulakatita, of whom you have always spoken highly. He is seated at the root of the tree for the day's abiding." So the king knows the family. He knows that they're highly respected, well-to-do, highly regarded. Therefore, the son of this family must be also well in that same stature. "Good gamekeeper, enough of the pleasure garden for today. Now we should go pay respect to the master Ratthapala." Then saying, "Give away all the food that has been prepared there." The king had a number of state carriages prepared. Mounting one of them, accompanied by other carriages, he drove out from Tulakatita with the full pomp of royalty to see the venerable Ratthapala. So Venerable goes into this whole thing about, well, this is modern times. It could be a king, could be the president bringing the entire cabinet, the chief of staff, the whole Congress, putting them in those black SUVs, going out to wherever it is to meet this master. I mean, she said, we have that kind of wealth. We have that kind of person that can direct large entourages with no sense of limit, no sense of frugality. I want to go see this person, and I want everybody to join me. I mean, that's the kind of thinking that a king, a president, a dictator, or a sheik, or whatever. So she's just talking about this kind of wealth is also present in our everyday world. He drove thus as far as the road was passable for carriages, and then he dismounted from his carriage and went forward on foot, with the following of the most eminent officials to where the venerable Ratthapala was. Can you imagine President Trump of the Congress going to see Master Ratthapala? He exchanged greetings with the venerable Ratthapala, and when his courteous and amiable talk was finished, he stood to one side and said, "Here is an elephant rug. Let Master Ratthapala be seated on it." "No, thank you, great king. I'm sitting on my own mat." I guess that was a sign. That's what you offered. An elephant skin was a sign of great respect to offer to a guest to sit on, because they're considered to be animals of great power, great respect. So King Kauravya sat down on a seat made ready and said, Master Pala, there are 4 kinds of losses. Because they have undergone these 4 kinds of loss, some people here shave off their hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, go forth from the home life into homelessness. What are the 4? They are lost through aging, lost through sickness, loss of wealth, and loss of relatives. So his understanding of why people go into the homeless life is totally fake news. And we're going to find out how Ratthapala turns this and shows the king that that is not true. At what is lost through aging, here Master Ratthapala, someone is old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, come to the last stage. He considers, I am old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, come to the last stage. It is no longer easy for me to acquire wealth or to augment wealth I've already acquired. I might as well just shave off my hair and beard, put on a yellow robe, go forth from the home life into homelessness. Because he has undergone that loss through aging, he shaves off his hair and beard, puts on the yellow robes, goes forth from the home life into homelessness. This is called the loss through aging. So first misinformation is only people who get old ordain. Master Ratthapala, you are still young, black-haired young man, endowed with the blessings of youth and the prime of life. Master Ratthapala has not undergone any loss through aging. What has he known or seen or heard that he has gone forth from the home life into homelessness? I don't understand. Why are you doing this at the high, you're in your 30s, you've got your whole life ahead of you, you've got these beautiful wives, you've got this loving family. Second loss, well, what about the loss through sickness? Master Ratthapala, someone is afflicted, suffering, and gravely ill. He considers this, I'm afflicted, suffering, and gravely ill. It is no longer easy for me to acquire unacquired wealth, so forth and so on. I'm going to go into the homeless life because I'm just too sick to do anything else. Because he's undergone the loss through sickness, he goes forth from the home life into homelessness. This is called the loss through sickness. But Master Ratthapala, now you are free from illness and affliction. You possess a good digestion that's neither hot nor cold, too warm but medium. You have not undergone any loss through sickness. What do you know? What have you seen or heard that has caused you to go forth from the home into homelessness? Okay, so the king is continuing to be just bewildered by why this wonderful, wealthy young man is doing this crazy thing. And what is loss of wealth? Here Master Ratthapala says someone is rich, of great wealth, of great possession. Gradually his wealth dwindles away. He considers, formerly I was rich, of great wealth, of great possessions. Gradually my wealth has dwindled away. It is no longer easy for me to acquire unacquired wealth, to be able to be happy, to be able to be healthy. Therefore, I might as well just shave my beard, shave my hair, leave the home life and go into the life of homelessness. Because he has undergone the loss of wealth, there he goes. This is called the loss of wealth. But Master Ratthapala, you are the son of the leading clan in this Tulakatita. You have not undergone any loss of wealth. What has possessed you to go into the life of homelessness when you've got more wealth than anybody could ever imagine? That's the third loss. Fourth loss, what is the loss of relatives? Here, Master Ratthapala, someone has many friends and companions, kinsmen and relatives. Gradually, those relatives of his dwindle away. He considers formerly had a lot of friends, I had a lot of companions, kinsmen and relatives. Gradually, those relatives of mine have dwindled away. It is no longer easy for me to acquire wealth, I'm getting old, I'm getting sick. I might as well just shave my hair and beard, give up the home life and enter the homeless life. Because he's undergone particularly this loss of relatives, that's the best thing I can do. But Master Ratthapala, you have friends, companions, family that adores you, relatives in this same Tulakatita. Why? You haven't undergone any loss of relatives. What's the problem here? Why are you choosing to do this when you have everything as far as people who love and cherish you? Master Ratthapala, these are the 4 kinds of losses. Because they have undergone those 4 kinds of losses, some people here shave off their hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, go forth from the home life into homelessness. Master Ratthapala has not undergone any of these. What has he known or seen or heard that he has gone forth from the home life into homelessness? So here's this king of this powerful country, and he thinks that the only people who are ordained are people that are getting old, people that are getting sick, people who have lost their wealth, and people who are lonely. And that could be, people look at us and go, you can't deal with your sexuality, you don't mind patriarchy, you're old-fashioned, you want people to tell you what to do, you don't have any energy for working hard and being successful in life, so you're going to go ahead and sit on some mountain and just, look at your belly button all day. I mean, there really is some stereotypes of, in our world, because monastics are a fairly rare breed of human beings at this moment. And so the king has got the same kind of stereotypes regarding Ratthapala and who ordains in his kingdom and beyond. So here is where we find out what it was that the Buddha taught Ratthapala that inspired him so much to lead the homeless life. Great king, there are 4 summaries of the Dhamma that have been taught by the Blessed One who knows and sees. Accomplished and fully enlightened, knowing and seeing and hearing them, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. What are those 4? Number 1, life in any world is unstable, it is swept away. That is the first summary of the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened. Knowing and seeing this, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. And he'll unpack these for us. Number 2 was life in any world has no shelter. There's no protector. This is the second summary of the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One who knows and sees. And hearing this, I went forth from the home life into the homelessness. Third one is life in any world has nothing of its own. One has to leave all and pass on. This is the third summary of the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One who knows and sees. Who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened. Knowing and seeing and hearing this, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. Life in any world is incomplete, insatiate, the slave of craving. This is the 4th summary of the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened. Knowing and seeing and hearing this, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. Great King, these are the 4 summaries of the Dhamma that have been taught by the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened. Knowing and seeing and hearing this, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. Okay, so now the king's going, what exactly are the meanings of these statements? He doesn't understand what it was about these 4 statements that possessed Ratthapala to go and ordain. Okay, so what he does, this is the skillful means of this Arhat Ratthapala. He's going to turn those summaries around. He's going to use the king's life as an example of these 4 kinds of losses. Venerable had all sorts of things to say about this. Okay, what do you think, Great King? So this is the first one, that the world is unstable, it is swept away. What does that mean? What do you think, Great King? When you were 20 or 25 years old, were you an expert rider of elephants, an expert horseman, an expert charioteer, an expert archer, an expert swordsman, strong in thighs and arms, sturdy, capable in battle? And the king replies, when I was 20 or 25 years old, Master Ratthapala, I was an expert rider of elephants. I was an expert horseman, expert charioteer, expert archer, expert swordsman, strong in thighs and arms, sturdy, capable in battle, and could equal anybody. I did not see anybody who could equal me in strength. What do you think, Great King? Are you now as strong as in thigh and arm and sturdy and capable as in battle? No, Master Ratthapala, now I am old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, come to the last stage, my years have turned 80. Sometimes I mean to put my foot here, and I put my foot somewhere else. Sounded familiar, elders? Great King, it was on account of this that the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened one said, life in any world is unstable, is swept away. And when I knew and saw and heard this, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. So he's using the king's personal experience to say, this is what the Buddha meant when he said that the world is unstable. You are a prime example of what he's trying to teach. Wonderful, Master Ratthapala. It is marvelous how well that has been expressed by the Blessed One, who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened. Life in any world is unstable. It is swept away. It is indeed so. Okay, so loss number 1 has been verified by his own experience, and now the king sees the clarity and the wisdom of the Buddha. Now, Master Ratthapala, there exists in this court elephant troops and cavalry and chariots and troops and infantry, which will serve to subdue any threats to us. Now, Master Ratthapala, life in any world has no shelter, no protector. How should the meaning of that statement be understood? What do you think, great king? Do you have any chronic ailments? I have chronic wind ailment, Master Ratthapala. Sometimes my friends and companions, my kinsmen, my relatives, stand around me thinking, now King Korvai is about to die. We know he's about to die. He's got all these problems. What do you think, great king? Can you command your friends and companions, your kinsmen and relatives? Come, my good friends and companions, my kinsmen and relatives, all of you present here, share these painful feelings so that I may feel less pain. Or do you have to feel that pain all alone by yourself? And the king says, I can't command my friends and companions, my kinsmen and relatives, thus, Master Ratthapala. I have to feel that great pain alone. All right, so no protection, no defense. You suffer alone. Great king, it is on account of this that the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened, said, life in any worlds has no shelter and no protector. And when I knew and saw and heard this, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. It is wonderful, Master Ratthapala. It is marvelous how well that has been expressed by the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened. Life in any world has no shelter and no protector. It is indeed so. Okay? Second loss, second summary, the king is getting wiser. Once again, when it comes to the Dharma, if we want it to come real for us, we have to take what the Buddha said, say, is that what happens in my life? Is that true? Can I take that teaching and say, is it true for me, the way I live my life, what comes up for me, who I relate to, my wealth, my success, my family, my friends, my struggles? We have to see how much the Buddha is saying this is what is true. Master Ratthapala, there exists in this court abundant gold coins and bullion stored away in vaults and lofts. Now, Master Ratthapala, life in any world has nothing of its own. One has to leave all and pass on. How should the meaning of that statement be understood? Well, what do you think, great king? You now enjoy yourself, provided and endowed with the 5 ways of sensual pleasure, but you will be able to have it of the life to come. Let me likewise enjoy myself, provided and endowed with these same 5 cores of sensual pleasures, or will others take over your property while you have to pass according to your actions? All right, so when you die, you're going to take all that wealth with you. You're going to take all of the sense pleasures. You're going to take this body that enjoys all those sense pleasures so much. I cannot have it thus of the life to come, Master Ratthapala. On the contrary, others will take over this property while I shall have to pass on according to my actions. Great king, it was on account of this that the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened, said, life in any world has nothing of its own. One has to leave all and pass on. And when I knew and saw and heard this, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. So try to understand that when the Buddha was teaching this on that day and Ratthapala was in the audience, he was somehow using his own life as an example. And that's how he came to the conclusion that he did, just as the king is coming more explicitly to the king on why these summaries are true. It is wonderful, Master Ratthapala. It is marvelous how well it has been expressed by the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened. Life in any world has nothing of its own. One has to leave all and pass on. It is indeed so. Now, Ratthapala, life in any world is incomplete, insatiate, the slave of craving? How should the meaning of that statement be understood? What do you think, great king? Do you reign over the rich Kuru country? Yes, Master Ratthapala, I do. What do you think, great king? Suppose a trustworthy and reliable man came to you from the east and said, please know, great king, that I have come from the east, and there I saw a large country, powerful and rich, very populous and crowded with people. There are plenty of elephant troops, plenty of cavalry, chariot troops, infantry. There are plenty of ivory there, and plenty of gold coins and bullion, both unworked and worked, and plenty of women for wives. With your present forces, you could conquer it. Conquer it then, great king. What would you do? So Ratthapala is asking, king, What would you do if someone you really trusted came and said, I've been there, you should see what they've got? He said, I would conquer and reign over it, Master Ratthapala. That's what I would do. I'm stronger, more powerful. I'm the master. My troops are far beyond anything that you've seen in the East, and I could do this like a walk in the park. What do you think, great king? Suppose a trustworthy and reliable man came to you from the West and said, please know, great king, that I've come from the West, and there I saw large country, powerful. Just think of the leaders in our world and the kind of thinking they have. Is it anywhere close to this? Country that is powerful, rich, very populous, crowded with people, plenty of elephant troops, plenty of cavalry troops, wealth, infantry, ivory, gold, mahogany, just lots and lots of wealth, bullion, both unworked and worked, plenty of women for wives, men for husbands, whatever you want, or anybody you want. With your present force, you can conquer it. Would you conquer it, great king? And he'd say, yes, I could do that. So Ratthapala goes to the south, he goes to the north, he goes across the sea. And every time that this imaginary reliable friend comes and says, I've been there, you should see what they have. I've been over there, you should see what they have. I've been over the sea, way over there, and I've seen what they've had. King, you should conquer these people. Your wealth would go through the moon. Great king, it was on account of this that the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened, said, life in any world is incomplete, insatiate, the slave of craving. And when I knew and saw and heard this, I went forth from the home life into homelessness. So what he's basically saying, king, you couldn't contain yourself. It's never going to be good enough. There's not going to be enough wealth. There's not going to be enough women. There's not going to be enough jewels and treasures and forests and pure water and hydroelectric dams and, brilliant engineers. And you're never going to be happy. There's always going to be more greener grass on the other side of the fence. Can you see the craving? And the king says, Master Ratthapala, it is marvelous how well that has been expressed by the Blessed One who knows and sees, accomplished and fully enlightened. Life in any world is incomplete, insatiate, and the slave of craving. It is indeed so. So here is where, so once again, the four summaries, Venerable says, this was a little bit of a summary before she got into the final verses, which Ratthapala really summarizes these four summaries very clearly. And Venerable brings it once again into our modern world, how we might look at how these four summaries really are shown in our lives and how to make sense of this. So she said, no, Ratthapala had no interest in any worldly happiness, much to his parents' dismay, because he really truly understood that the world does not endure. The world is without protection or shelter. The world is without ownership. The world is insufficient, insatiable, and a slave to craving. And once he understood that, he went through all the hardship of attaining arhatship. And Venerable says here, to give up attachment to happiness in general, to be content to create the causes for the real happiness of Buddhahood, and let go of forcing yourself to create them, they will arise through your practice naturally. So I think, I don't know where this came, because I wasn't sure, this is later on that I missed it for some reason, but she was trying to give general rules of saying, okay, when you listen to this, don't try to squeeze yourself into getting clear. Don't try to squeeze yourself into aspiring to do something different, to attain Buddhahood. She said, create it. She's always said to us, be content to create the causes, and the results will come about. But what we have to be, and what Ratthapala is saying, that we have to be very clear about what the causes for true happiness are, and what are the causes for suffering. So the four losses are the causes of suffering. The four summaries are clarity about what are the causes for real happiness. So then Ratthapala has these beautiful verses that basically unpack these summaries in a little bit more detailed form. And this is where Venerable kind of brings it up more into our lives. So I've got some of her commentary on this. So this is what the Venerable Ratthapala said. I see men wealthy in the world, who yet from ignorance give not their gathered wealth, Greedily they hoard away their riches, longing still for further sensual pleasures. So here Venerable says, okay, how many of us, when we make some really good money, we hoard it, we don't spend it, but we stash it away, waiting to acquire more. And by doing that, she says, we use up our good karma for wealth by not creating the causes for wealth in the future by the practice of giving. So to bring this into our own world, our own life, whatever wealth that we have created through the practice of generosity in the past, to be able to have that in the future, so we don't have the hardship that makes practice so difficult, is to use that wealth at some level to be able to create the causes for wealth in the future with a good motivation. So I can benefit people more, I can be charitable, I can create merit more, but to not be a hoarder and not just to have wealth just to say that you have a lot of wealth. And that's what Ratthapala is saying to the king even, is to practice generosity. The king who has conquered the earth by force and rules over the land the ocean bounds is yet unsated with the seas near shore and hungers for its further shore as well. So Venerable says here, even though we have our own little empires, and that could be in the meditation hall or that could be at home, somewhere, wherever we live, we want more and better. We want a better job, we want better status. And she said, we want to set the standards for ourselves rather than let other people set the standards for us. She says, we want to get ahead, but we want to do it on our own terms. We want to call the shots. What is our motivation? So even, she says, even when we're trying to do something that's beneficial, that sometimes the motivation to benefit others, there's this little bit of the 8 worldly concerns hiding behind this. I'm going to benefit sentient beings, but it's okay if I gain a little status, I gain a little renown, I gain a little fame, I gain a little wealth. So she says, even when we go for the things that we find we want to be successful, is to always be careful of the motivation that we set, to make sure that it comes from a place of virtue and of help, and not with the 8 worldly concerns sneaking around under the radar screen, doing this for more fame, more status. I mean, put your name on a hospital, put your name on a park bench, I don't know, whatever. You want people to know that you gave for this. And that's why the Abbey doesn't, we don't really put these people are the best of the donors, they gave all this money, and then there's these people that gave really, really good money, and then there's the people down here that only gave us a little bit of money. All of our donors are appreciated and loved and honored equally. Doesn't matter. They give from their hearts, and that's what's most important. And we need to do the same. Next one is, most other people, too, not just a king, encounter death with craving, unabated, with plans still incomplete. They leave the corpse. Desires remain unsated in the world. So here she talks about dying without our bucket list being emptied. I found this really helpful in the beginning years before I ordained, to look at what my bucket list was. Because I'd had this 23 years of traveling, I had done a lot of things on my bucket list. But to see because they can actually be obstacles. Like, I have some things that I want to do before I ordain, because I won't be able to do them. So really look at what you've got that are, quote, maybe non-negotiables that you want to attain, accomplish, visit, experience before you ordain. She says, we try to empty the bucket list, but what happens, we keep adding things to our bucket list, even adding things from the past. We had something before that we no longer have. We want it again. So we add it back onto the bucket list to revisit, restart a relationship, goes to some place that we love, go visit, go do some sort of something because we had such a great time, or we crave for the same things that didn't get fulfilled in our childhood, that didn't get fulfilled. And we are adamant that before we die, before we ordain, we kind of put those together, right? Ordain or die, is that we're going to make sure that something, and Venerable makes the account of, like, I never got to go with my dad to a baseball game. Even though he's 95 years old, I'm going to get him to go to a baseball game with me so I can take that off my bucket list. I mean, it's a silly example, but we may have things that we never got to do, and they're on the bucket list, and we really want to do them before we move any farther. So then we go to our death with this craving mind, unfulfilled wishes, unfulfilled dreams, unemptied bucket list. So she said to really be careful on what it is that we're wanting to do. What's the value of it? What's the virtue of it? What's the what's the problem with it? So look at our bucket list. I think everybody might have a small one, maybe a large one. Let's see. His relatives lament and rend their hair, crying, "Ah me, alas, our loved one is dead." They bear away the body wrapped in shrouds. They place it on a pyre and burn it there. Okay, we leave behind all our friends and dear ones. And then she builds up the story about, the memorial service. Hundreds and hundreds of people come. Everybody talks about us in a very positive, pleasing way. Finally, they understand who I really, really was. And they just, the air in the memorial service is filled with compliments and rejoicing and gratitude. And they were just the most wonderful person. They invest in this really expensive casket. They really go to the nines. They're just crying uncontrollably, and then they go and have a really, really big lunch afterwards because crying really makes you hungry. You're gone. And sometimes the way that people sort of make up for their bad behavior with you is they show at your funeral how much they loved you, cared you, mostly for people to be convinced that you were loved in that way. I mean, funerals bring up all sort of mixed emotions for people, especially for family. Then, clad in shroud, he leaves his wealth behind. Prodded with stakes, he burns upon the pyre. And as he dies, no relatives or friends can offer him shelter and refuge here. So here we are. So instead of maybe having a very, very fancy casket, our family does a cremation. And so all of the preening and the care and the dying and the highlighting and the gym work and the marathon running and the surfing and the hang gliding and the pumping and the slimming or whatever. We do this up at Sukhavati. That's the place where people bring their loved ones' ashes, and you get this little Ziploc bag that has nothing but this very fine dust. And we take it and we say, mantra, and we just throw it, and the wind just takes it and carries it away down the hill. So all of that, none of us can offer, and we can't offer the person who died any shelter, any protection. We can't go with them to help their way through the bardo. Everything is left behind. We can't suffer for them. We can't take on their fear. We can't guide them. And so that's really the truth of death. We just become ashes to ashes, dust to dust. While his heirs take over his wealth, this being must pass on according to his actions. And as he dies, nothing can follow him, not his child, his wife, nor wealth, nor royal estate. And here Venerable says, okay, after our death, all our possessions are put out. Either they're put out on the table. Here they're probably going to just be put out on the table. We don't have that much stuff. And it's picked over. It's picked over by your family. They bring out your bank account. They bring out your stocks and bonds. They bring out your certificates of deposit. They bring out whatever money you got stashed under your mattress. My grandfather, all that money that we got, my brother and sister and I, he had like $36,000 under his mattress in bills. He was from Hungary. I guess he didn't trust the banks, but that's where they found most of his money was under the mattress. They're going to go over who wants her mala, who wants his statue, who wants his dharma books, mostly for memorabilia, to remember them until we don't remember them anymore. But picking through our things, arguing over our money. And in the meantime, we're going wherever our karma propels us, a lot of it created trying to acquire and sustain and hold on to and hoard all of that wealth and to have it as a part of our identity, a part of who we were. So she said, we go where our karma propels us and leave everything behind. And so that is so helpful to just remember, because one of the hard things, if you do aspire to just explore monastic life, anagark or whatever, is that you've got to if it's temporary, you got to, find some place who's going to take care of your pets, who's going to watch your house, who's going to feed your plants, who's going to, get some time off from work, or if you're really going to make the commitment, like Nicole did, you have to just let go of everything. Your car, your bank account, all the stuff you've acquired, your workplace, your friendships with your employees are going to change. There's a whole bunch of things to do in the process of just really making the firm aspiration, even just to do the anagarka. You've got to simplify your life so you can do this without having this thing in the back of your mind, God, I wonder who's watering the plants this week. God, I hope my cat's okay. You really want to put your life in some trusted hands as you do this discernment, that's what you choose to do. You can't just walk away. You've got to, and that takes time, that takes effort. So the simpler our lives are, the easier that will be. The more complicated it is, the harder it is even just to do the process of discernment. Longevity is not acquired with wealth, nor can prosperity banish old age. Short is this life, as all the sages say. Eternity it knows not, only change. So this whole idea that you cannot acquire longevity through wealth, nor can aging be kept at bay. And at this point, Venerable referred to the Kennedy family. I don't know, you young ones, I'm sure almost everybody knows about them. They were probably the most prestigious, wealthy family, turn of the 1900s, all through the 20th century. It was a huge clan, Irish Catholics. They were politically savvy, wealthy. They had a lot of money. The Kennedy name was just everywhere. We had a president from that family who, was assassinated. They had a few years later, in 1968, another brother was assassinated. There was a family member that had some mental disabilities. A grandson was flying a plane with his wife and her sister, and they went down in the Hudson River. I mean, you can have all the wealth that you want, and that doesn't ensure that karma isn't going to ripen and that you're not going to have an untimely death. And so to not look this, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, maybe a little bit wise, there's no guarantee. Day by day, we're getting older. We don't know when we're going to die. And as we get older, and you'll see, maybe even in your 30s, maybe in your 40s, you start seeing that it's a little bit harder to get up in the morning. The back's a little bit sore. Recovering from illnesses takes a little bit longer. Once you get past 60, 70, it's definitely evident that illnesses are more frequent. The body starts to fall apart. The whole process of even wanting to live a long life comes up. It's a mixed bag. It really is a mixed bag. And then what Venerable says, she says, inside of you, and this is so true with the Dharma, is that as the Dharma gets your mind clearer and clearer and softened up and opened up, and things are changing so much that you actually feel like you're still in your 20s. I mean, the mind just becomes just happier, lighter, more, just more in love with the world, more friendly with the world, more flexible. But you've got this body. So you've got this mind that's opening up and settling down and clarifying and getting filled with kindness. And you've got this body that's falling apart, which then you have to use that mind that's getting clearer and calmer and friendlier and wiser to deal with the fact that the body's going to hell in a handbasket. And it's one of the most profound practices. And you can talk to any of the 5 elders in this community, 6 elders in this community, to know that if the mind hasn't practiced the Dharma for acceptance and love and kindness and death and impermanence, getting old is one of the most miserable, frightening things that can happen. And that's what Venerable's saying. She loves the state of her mind, but, God, everything hurts. And also, too, that not necessarily longevity. I mean, we're praying for younger people all the time who have died in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, or people that are very, very ill, like their whole life was ahead of them, and they're gone. That the Dharma can help us prepare and make this life meaningful so that we're not so afraid of death. So that whole meditation on death and impermanence, folks, the 9-point death meditation, so powerful. Don't ever, ever lose that little thread that helps so much as the years go on. I know for a fact this whole, just dealing with aging has been a really profound practice. And it's the urgency of life, the preciousness of this human life is, going. I don't know, 20 years, maybe. I don't know how old some of us elders will live, but boy, if your practice isn't on firm ground, it really gets tested when you get older than 65. Okay. The rich and poor alike shall feel the Dharma's touch, the death's touch. I hope they feel the Dharma's touch. The fool and the sage as well shall feel it too. But while the fool lies stricken by his folly, no sage will ever tremble at the touch. So here Venerable just says, she has said it a number of times. She says one of the worst experience, she would never ever want to die with regret. She would never want to die with remorse, that I coulda, shoulda, woulda. Why didn't I? and that to not be able, and that it says here that fools look back on their lives with regret, but because sages and wise ones have made wise choices in their lives and lived the teachings, when death comes, they're okay with it. This is a really profound teaching, folks, to be able to meet death with a mind that's still, a mind that doesn't have any guilt or sorrow, lamentation about what you missed, your opportunities that you let pass by because you weren't too sure, you were attached to something. And with exploring monastic life, this is one that's really worth pondering. Better is wisdom here than any wealth, since by wisdom one gains the final goal. For people through ignorance do evil deeds, while failing to reach the goal from life to life. So here, Venerable, all she says is that through wisdom we learn to eliminate the afflictions. We really practice to eliminate the self-grasping ignorance, the self-centered thought, to master our own minds. So much of practice is being able to become not just a good friend to our own minds, to be able to master it so that when the afflictions arise, we don't feel like we're becoming enslaved by the afflictions, but that we're the master of where we're going to direct our mind, to know that the antidotes are available, and to really apply them. So because we don't want to die knowing that the next life we're going to struggle with the same afflictions, we're going to struggle with the same grasping, the self-centeredness is going to be as firmly planted as it was when we left this life. We really want to work very, very hard on cultivating this wisdom. And then let's see, we've got 3 more. Just as a robber, is that the one? As one goes to the womb and the next world, renewing the successful round of births, another of little wisdom, trusting him, goes also to the womb and the next world. So this one, Venerable had a hard time trying to figure out what this meant. Going from womb to womb, being reborn again and again, even with a little wisdom. When it says here, another little wisdom, trusting him, goes also to the womb in the next world, she thought that perhaps this meant those who believe in a creator God. No matter how virtuous, no matter how much they followed the rule of that creator God, they're still going to take rebirth. That was the best that she could come up with understanding this verse. And then the next we've got, let's see, just as a robber caught in burglary is made to suffer for his evil deed, so people after death in the next world are made to suffer for their evil deeds. So once again, she says, analogies only work so far, but this one works in that just as a thief is caught for the things that they've done wrong, robbing and stealing from banks, people harming people, are punished. So people propelled by their afflictions and karma, if not now, in the future, will also have to pay some sort of price in the next life. So what she's saying here, she really wanted us to understand that we are the ones who create the causes for that very same suffering. That we are not so much like the thief, but we have some choices about, if we understand karma, we have some agency on understanding what are the causes for suffering. And to be able to be clear about what they are, what are the causes that we need to create for happiness, both temporal and ultimate happiness, or else we're going to be once again propelled by our afflictions and karma and suffer the results of not now and in the future. So a lot of these are long-term, not just this life. All right, so rebirth plays into some of these verses. Sensual pleasures, varied, sweet, and delightful in many different ways, disturb the mind. Seeing the danger in these sensual ties, I choose to lead the homeless life, O King. So here is that Ratthapala really sees that the afflictions, and that is as delightful and sweet and varied as sensual pleasures are, that they disturb the mind and that they really are dangerous for the long-term well-being of the mind. And that seeing the drawbacks of them, Ratthapala was able to go forth. And so he's just reminding the king that you have a world totally filled with sensual pleasures, totally filled, very sweet and delightful. But watch the mind that gets excited. Watch the mind that gets distracted. Watch the mind that can't get enough. That this is a dangerous place to find oneself if you can't rein in and moderate. Not that sensual pleasures by themselves are bad. It's just this craving and clinging and the dissatisfaction that you just can't get enough. That is the danger. And for the king in particular, because he had almost unlimited resources, this could be a real death trap for him as far as his practice goes. And then last but not least, as fruits fall from the tree, so people too, both young and old, fall when this body breaks. Seeing this too, O king, I have gone forth. Better is the recluse's life assured. So here just the analogy, when the fruit gets old, it falls from the tree. So till we get old, our body will fall as well, or we will die young. So Ratthapala chose to lead the homeless life. And she made some interesting observations here about this last verse. She said, to having something to show for myself and for others at the end of my life. What is seen as virtue and meaningful for us in our life, others may not see it. So despite our efforts, our sincere practice, our decisions that we've made in our life, people may see us as crazy, being opportunistic, being illogical, just doing things that don't make any sense. So even though we have done something truly wonderful, something truly virtuous, the rest of the world may have absolutely no idea of what's really happening for us. We give up sensual pleasures, and here she said is that the part that we have to be vigilant about is that we give up sensual pleasures, but there still can be a part of us that wants to be somebody in the Dharma world that others will praise us for. Okay, so we look on the surface to be sincere, we learn the Dharma, we're articulate, we share, we're very conversant in it, but what is the motivation behind that? We're trying to get a good reputation, we try to impress people. What we take with us is totally invisible to people, right? So we're the only ones who know our motivations for what we do on the path. We have our karma, our mental seeds that may propel us to a lower rebirth, although on the surface it looks like we're doing Dharma, we're getting somewhere, we're making a name for ourselves. People are just they're delighted with us when in fact the motivation's really, really crappy. She says just to remember that the law of karma is infallible. We can't negotiate with it nor fool it. All right, so we can't skip over the fact that we create the causes and conditions for our own suffering and happiness. Cause and effect always are working. Looking good does no good at death. All right, so once again, these kind of, and it sounds kind of like so obvious, but when you are in a community like the Abbey, and it has the reputation that it's starting to have, to be able to maintain a humility and a deference to our teachers, and to always say, everything I know comes from my teachers. I mean, you can really see people sometimes they want to establish special relationships with you. They like what they hear. They like the way they connect with you. And it's very hard not to fall into these temptations to have special relationships, to be seen as better than who you are, which is why wherever we go, we always defer to the kindness of our teachers, the kindness of Venerable, the kindness of His Holiness, Venerable Sangye Kadra. None of us know what we know without the kindness of our teachers. And that always keeps us humble, keeps us realistic, keeps us in some deep, profound way where we belong. And as the community grows and the name of the Abbey gets larger and more out there in the world, we're representatives of a larger picture. We're just doing the Dharma as best as we can, sharing what we can, and to be really humble about it and not to get too full of ourselves. That's something to be very, very careful of. Being ordained is not a career. We're not making ourselves renowned. And one of the things that Venerable says that she has seen over and over again in the course of her Dharma life is that the sincere practitioners don't make a big deal about being seen or praised. So many times she talked about these great yogis and practitioners that lived in these dirt hovels up above Dharamsala, that they wore threadbare clothes and they hardly ate any food, and they were the most joyful, incredible people, but nobody knew about them. Many of the great practitioners we will never know about, but they went on, they transformed and purified their minds, they benefited a lot of beings into the next life, assured that they would continue their work to serve sentient beings, and knowing that either if they weren't realized in this life, they were certainly going to attain that shortly afterwards. So she's giving us a little bit of a warning here that, we're going to get old, sick, and die, and we want to make sure that we go into the next life with a mind of virtue, a mind of gratitude, a mind of, as Lama Yeshe said, I'm a servant of others, I am a servant of others, I am a servant of others. So that is the end of the Ratthapala Sutta, and I did that in record time. We have a good half an hour left. So do folks have any questions? If not, we could do a few of these group discussion questions, but any thoughts? What came up for you with these 4 losses and these 4 summaries, and how Ratthapala unpacked these for the king? And anything that you sort of stuck out for you? Maybe nothing, I don't know. So I can throw out some of the group discussion questions and see what you think. So after hearing this story, did you have some question? Do you have something? Did I miss a hand? Venerable Jenny.
That we've been saying, and we've been hearing over and over and over, how meditating on those sufferings, the dukkha of cyclic existence, all those middle scope meditations are the key, and that's exactly what Ratthapala heard. And those were the 4 things outlined with a slightly different outline, a slightly different language, but that's exactly what. Of course, we hear it, and it takes years and years and years to go, oh, maybe I should ordain. He became an arhat. Well, we have different karma, but the same meditations. It was the same points. So that's just what I wanted to point out.
Yeah, well said. The dukkha of human beings, getting what we don't want, being separated from what we want, not getting what we want despite our efforts, birth, aging, sickness, and death. Everything's laid out. And to remember, folks, this was 2,600 years ago and applies perfectly to our situation right now. This is not old stuff. This is timeless stuff. Okay, so one of the questions I had, and I'll just throw it out to the group here. How would you describe your response to others' now, I think you had a group discussion about approval and disapproval, but this is going to go a little bit deeper here. How would you describe your response to others' expectations or pressure advice on what they think is best when they hear of your spiritual interests? From your parents, your coworkers, social media, families. How do you respond when people are either surprised or they're a little bit concerned or they're supportive or they're totally adverse to whatever your thoughts have? And if you haven't said anything to them about your aspirations, why is that? Has anybody on your journey, both the monastics here in the community and also the folks here, has there any been when they heard that you were coming, living, ordaining, checking it out? And they'll have Venerable Deki next. Okay.
I've had some family friends that I've told, and some have been very averse and kind of confused as to the purpose of monastics in the modern day. And I kind of felt hurt by that, because I feel like to me it's pretty obvious, but I guess to a lot of people who are so distant from it that they don't know why it's important. So I would try to just bring a couple of things up that they could understand, and not maybe try to have them think entirely how I'm thinking, but just to give them a taste of why might someone want to be a monastic, why might it be at least a little bit important, and maybe not for me in particular, but why someone might want to do it.
Could you share some of those, Ash? Maybe one or two things that you've...
I think that it's
No pressure. If it doesn't come up, that's fine.
I think that one of the confusions that came up in particular was why be celibate, for example. Like, I mean, the monastic community that I am most familiar with is not, but this particular kind of pushback that I got was like, oh, like why would you be celibate? And like there's no it's kind of cold, there's not like love in that. And kind of just to sharing my experience, like no, like in fact, I don't believe that romantic love is necessarily the love that we all may think it is initially. There are other forms of love, and kind of describing that experience of what that is. I think that kind of opened the perspective of, it doesn't have to be just the kind of love that I'm thinking of. There's more beyond my own experience.
Yeah. That's always kind of a funny little question for people who talk to monastics is why bother about it, and boy, I'll tell you, it sure simplifies things. And also, the whole bodhicitta motivation is that you want to be able to benefit all sentient beings, and having that level of intimacy with one person really does complicate the possibility of keeping your heart open to all sentient beings, not just one special person. And it's a fairly transitory thing. Like Venerable says, if it's good as it is, why do you have to keep doing it? I mean, there are different ways to answer that question, but I know for a fact for myself that being kind of a wild child in those 23 years of journeying is that it was a great relief from my mind to be able to just give the body some of the, not that my sexual energy disappeared or things changed, but I was able to sort of refocus it and just give my body just a sense of ease. I could be with people and not worry about being sexually attracted and being physically attracted and things like that. It just changed my whole relationship to people. Whole relationship to people. What, Becky, did you want to share?
My dad gave kind of the classic dad response when I told him I wanted to move here. He said, "I don't think that's the wisest financial decision." And I was like, "You're right, Dad, it's not. But it's something that's incredibly meaningful to me, and that's more important than financial security." And he accepted and supported me in that. So
that's a big concern for family. It's who's going to feed you, who's going to take care of you when you're old, who's going to take care of you when you're sick. Nicole?
Venerable, my mom thought that it was really sad that we don't like play musical instruments here, or engage in music in that way, and it was very hard to convince her that there was, fulfillment in that way for me, but also that I didn't have the same needs that she does anymore where that's concerned, because for her, that specific, form is essential for happiness. Like, it is a spiritual experience to her. And so the thought of anybody having a life without it just seems pointlessly like self-depriving. And there's really just nothing that I can say to her, because that is the reality she lives in. So I've just come to accept that she feels sad about it, but I don't.
And I have to say, there's a few members in this community that still deal with their love of music, and that it was a spiritual expression for them, and it's still there. You know, I found music to be one of my greatest loves, but every once in a while I just have it come up in my head in the middle of a meditation. I mean, they're still in there, they're still playing. But the music, what it represents in this particular community is an offering to the Buddha. It becomes not just a self-gratifying. I mean, it can also be very self-gratifying because it can deepen one's practice. But to make it as an offering to the Buddhas opens it up, and then the heart comes through in a very different way than just hearing music or playing music. There's something that kind of transcends when you use it as an offering rather than something that pleases you yourself. Yeah. Venerable Samten or Venerable Chuni, do you want to share anything about your love of music and how it's had to kind of work yourself through this, or do you want to not bother? I mean, because it's been really amazing to watch all, the both of you move through this.
There's two things that happened, and before I was even thinking of ordaining, I was at a retreat at Cloud Mountain with venerable children, and at the end of the retreat, I discovered that the home I was sharing with my partner was broken into. It's a professional hit job, and they took all of his stuff, which was very, very expensive, antiquities and dinosaur bones and dinosaur skin, but they took all of my music stuff too, and my CDs and my very good speakers, and they just took all of that stuff. And when I heard about this, because I had just finished a 10-day retreat, my partner was absolutely devastated. And I was just like, well, I'm really glad we weren't home. No one was hurt. And then he hung up the phone. So that was not a skillful thing to say in retrospect. So I could already see that, music was something that was gaining less traction in my mind and heart, even though I still loved it. And the good thing here is that every now and then we have skits, and so we can grab a melody that we really, really like, and we put lyrics to the melody, and you kind of had a hint of that at my other BBC, but we will present that for sure at some point. And so we can still get it out of our system in a certain way. But the problem with getting it out of our system is that then these melodies are sort of in the mind for the next week as you're trying to meditate. And so then it's very clear that music is a great distraction in a certain way. And it is still clear in my experience, there are some places I can get to in listening to a particular piece of music, not rock and roll, but some classical pieces that get me to a place I can't get yet in my meditation. So it's a work in progress.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have two extremes with that too. One was that at the end, so before I went to the first 3-month retreat that I went to, the only one that was really, really, really silent, I must say, in all these years. But before that, I was in a little small folk trio of original music. We had a blast. We had so much fun. We were all writing music. We were playing coffee shops and folk life festivals. We weren't getting famous, but we were really having a good time. And then I went away for this completely silent 3-month retreat. Well, actually, this is a funny thing. I don't talk about this very much. I thought I heard during the whole first beginning of the retreat, I thought I was hearing a high school band practicing across the lake. It happened about the same time every afternoon. I was in Joel Tiemann High School. I was very familiar with the whole sound. And then after a while, I thought, there's no high school over there. And then I began to realize that there really was no place this music was coming from. And then it started to change. So there was something going in my head all the time that thought was coming from the outside. And Venerable when I finally went to her, she said, this is a negative karma ripening. So that was one experience that I hadn't even thought of. But okay, so then I'm doing this band, blah, 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 blah. I come out of that retreat, we do one rehearsal, and I quit. I quit the band. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to spend my time with this anymore. So that was one level of shock. But then, over the years, it's still important for me. I've sung to Tara up there so many times, it's unthinkable. But needing to just express in some way, I don't have any other outlet for. Mm-hmm. But I also have come to realize, and I don't know how to explain this, but over the years of working with, my attachment to music and also, wanting to be free of it, I've come to realize too, sometimes when I hear it, this is a huge hook to samsara. This is almost as big a hook, I think, as sex. That the pleasure that arises, like
Visceral.
at the core, visceral. It's not just sound. It's not just here. It's a body experience just from the vibration, right? And we get hooked. We're totally hooked. So once I realized that, and it wasn't that many years ago, when I was in India, I think, then I'm even more careful about to try to separate from that, knowing I will not be free from it because I've had it too long in this life. But I get that this is a major, major hook. That's why, and I understand the Buddha now. Like, why wouldn't we? Because this, it keeps you here. Yeah.
Venerable Damcho, could you share a little bit about your theater life? Anything there that's still a hook?
Initially, no. After I met the Dharma, I just remember paying for a very expensive dance performance that was so highly hyped up. It was Sylvie Guillaume with the Rolex watch, the foot at the 12 o'clock position. She was doing this cross-cultural thing. And I paid for these tickets. And I went and I was like, oh, it's a man and a woman walking across the stage a lot of times. And I paid this money. It was just really shocking after I had met the Dharma. I was like, that's all that's happening. Then what? That was one experience that really just calmed my, otherwise all I was doing was going to the theater all the time if I was not in rehearsal. And then moving here somewhere in the second year, though, I remember one winter retreat where I just felt very like, there's just some emotional things I don't know how to work with in meditation. I don't have the tools. I need to process it artistically, is what I thought. And I just need to get into rehearsal and roll around on the floor or do some character work, which is not happening. And I just felt so lost. And Venerable Children kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? But I think over time you just grow those tools in meditation. I could just see how much of an emotional crutch the arts was for me. That was just where my whole processing life happened. Yeah.
Well, so much the arts and music, it just gives full permission for the emotions to run freely.
Yeah, it was like, well, anything I was afraid of in meditation, in the past, it would be a character on stage. They acted out the anger. It wasn't me or the things I did that I didn't want to look at. So it was like, oh, you can't run away this time. I actually stopped writing since I ordained, because it was just writing for me is a very, very big tool, hook, since I was very, very young. So I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to stop. I think the last time I wrote a poem was when Venerable Heng Ching died. That was it. I was like, okay, I just need to write something for myself. Yeah. I wanted to share something in relation to your first question, though.
Yes.
Right, going back to that. So one time, in the process of getting ready to move here, I went to see my dentist for the last time, and I talked to the dental assistant about wanting to ordain, and she was so thrilled, and she hugged me, and she gave me an offering. And I was so excited by this because my whole family was so going to pieces, very unhappy. So I wrote the Venerable Children, and I went to the dentist, and the dental assistant gave me an offering.
My aspirations.
Yes. And Venerable wrote back and said, well, other people's response is basically none of your business. He said, that's the person's virtuous mind. That's very nice. Why should that affect whether or not you ordain? What other people think has nothing to do with why you ordain. I'm like, wow, okay. Save email. Remember this.
I have a box in my inboxes, Venerable's advice. They come in the form of emails. Anybody want Daniel?
I wanted to offer that something that I say when people ask me about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I say that an untrained mind can harm people. And I know that I need to train my mind. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of broken thinking and old habits, ways of thinking that are could be potentially harmful. And even just going through programs and taking classes, learning things, but not really knowing or understanding how it applies or relates to other things, having enough knowledge to be dangerous or harmful. So I want to explore that and be sure that I understand what I'm learning and how to talk to people about it, how to help myself, how to maybe help others. And then specifically about a monastic path, reviewing the Eightfold Path, about right view, right intention, right speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Right livelihood and concentration stood out for me as weak parts of that path. And livelihood for me, a householder's life. And I don't really have a household anymore. And this is it's a better way to spend my life, benefiting sentient beings, learning about the Dharma, learning about history and the future, and connecting past lives, and then concentration, obviously, in meditation, working with my mind and learning about different tools to expand and explore and work with that. So,
So have you had friends in your life understand why you're here?
They do. Yep.
Sounds like you're clear. Sounds like you're clear. Okay. So the other questions were, we've got just a few minutes here, is how do you internally deal with others' disappointments in you and the way you live your life? And whose approval and praise do you try to gain, and why? I don't know, did you deal with that, the group discussion, anytime when you talked about disapproval and the people in your life that you really don't want to disappoint? Anybody that's on your list? Or does it, whose approval, even, Juan Carlos, even, you're working through it, but there's still this, gosh, I wish they would just say yes. I wish they would just be okay with this.
So the people in my life, I don't care that they disapprove of what I do. Most of them approve, so I'm lucky in that sense.
And when you say they approve, what are you talking about specifically?
I don't think that many of them understand Buddhism or exactly what it is that I'm doing, but they seem to be generally supportive and have nothing negative to say about what I'm doing. I've noticed that a lot of the doubts that they have about my capacity to do it are doubts that I don't have about myself, and when I hear them from them, then it makes me doubt myself. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I do have people whose approval I seek, and that's all of you guys, and that's a thing that I've noticed, is that like I went from that to here, and it's like all of a sudden I care about the Sangha's approval of me, or I care about fitting in the Sangha, or I care about monastics' approval of what I'm doing, and why I'm seeking for that praise and for that confirmation that what I'm doing is the right decision, which is annoying because here nobody will tell you to ordain, right?
That's right. That's right. And looking for praise and approval from a community that is trained by a teacher who rarely gives praise and approval.
Yeah.
Is that the last question is, have you learned to trust yourself in your decisions regardless of what others think? So is it building your trust and self-confidence that, here you are with people who you really respect and care about, and even in this environment, to want other people to be happy with the way that you're being in the world can be a hook as well.
It's funny because I see the Sangha, and by seeing the Sangha, I develop confidence in the Dharma. And I develop confidence that my afflictions are workable, and that the things that I thought would be impediments from me ordaining are things that I can work before, during, and after ordination, and that I will have to work on. And I see evidence of that in the people that surround me that have worked on them and seem to have gotten, somewhere.
Yeah, that's a great insight, Juan Carlos.
And I don't know, I think that is developing confidence in myself and my capacity to work with my afflictions, because I also see that monastics here are not that different, from, or like, we're at similar places from where I am right today. And so I've learned to see the humanity behind the robes, and see that process and trust that process, and see, well, I think I can do it too. So yeah.
That's what we're kind of hoping, that we can model some practical, honest, You can do it too. Yeah. As far as the last question, folks, have you learned to trust yourself in your decisions, regardless of what others think? Has that been a process in the past year or so, or moving forward? Is that something? Are you fairly confident in your decisions? Have you learned what trust is, regardless of other people's thoughts? How's your self-confidence? How's your trust in your decisions? Then we'll put Sok, and then Sid.
What comes up for me around this is when I had the aspiration to ordain. I was a layperson, and two people I was close with at the time were helping me to do that. They were helping me write this letter to Venerable, which was kind of them. But they both had voiced that they thought I would come back. And
Sort of like Ratthapala's friends, right?
yeah, they said, "Oh, I'll give it 2 years," and they really seemed to think that this was just some little
Bucket list thing.
Yeah, but every time they said that, I knew that's not true at all. That's so wrong. Like, I didn't say it that my intention was to live here my whole life, but I knew it, and I don't remember if doubt arose whenever they spoke of that. I don't think it did. I think the opposite arose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sid.
I've noticed in the last few months, not specifically about monastic life, but in general, when I'm like making decisions or deciding things that feel right for me and feel like healthy for me as a person, I seem to be like seeking out others' approval in that. Like asking my mom, like, do you think that's okay? Asking my sister, what do you think? Asking my friends, do you see what I think? So that's something I haven't noticed before in myself. So I want to get a handle on that because I feel like that's like giving away all my power, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in the end, if we make decisions based on what other people think and it doesn't go well, it'll harm the relationship. That's why Venerable doesn't tell people to ordain, because if it doesn't go well, who they're going to blame. So it really does come. But there's a process for that, Sid. Because we love these people. They're in our lives for specific reasons. They have wisdom. They know us well. But to be able to build the self-confidence and the trust, that, especially when you say you're really clear about the decision, to not worry about, because then the self-doubt, like Juan Carlos was saying, arises. So yeah, that's something that you acknowledge that you're noticing it now. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Something that's important. Ash.
Yeah, I think it's been very helpful, like living, separately from my parents and working over the past few years. I don't think like if I had gone through this process like right after college, I would have had the same level of kind of trust in my own, decision making abilities and things. I feel like a lot of people, even, who are 40, 50 years old, still go to their parents for everything and ask their advice and stuff like that. It's like, okay, I mean, you can do that, but at some point, it's like, who has to bear the responsibility for your life, right?
And the results of those decisions.
And I think it's very tempting to want to have someone else decide for you, but that's not how it works.
Yeah. Andrea.
What comes up for me when I think about this question is leaving legal practice in 2017. I had put in, 10 years with school and practice that it really felt like a sunk cost at that point to pivot. And I remember there were a lot of people who said, oh, just go work in-house. That's the easiest path. That's what most people do, if they don't want to work in private practice. And after talking to a couple people who worked in-house, it sounded so boring. And I thought, there's no way that I could possibly do that. But I've been thinking about that pivot lately because at the time, my parents were very confused about why I was doing that, why I was back in my childhood bedroom, why I was back there unemployed. And, looking back now, it's one of the most rewarding decisions that I've made because even though I was unemployed for 7, 8 months, I ended up finding work that was so much more meaningful and compatible with my skills and interests. And when I think about, what, even though I didn't know what would come next, when I quit the job, nothing lined up, I knew that I couldn't, it was like a one-way door. Like I couldn't go back. Didn't know what was yet forward. But I think the pain threshold was so high at that point. I was like, well, it's not that direction. It has to be something else. And then I think about, well, what was it that how did I lean into whatever came next? And it really came from a place of curiosity, from genuine just interest in, what I was learning and the types of people who were doing that type of work. And I remember when I was going through coach training, it felt so intuitive and it felt so, it wasn't easy, but it felt easy. It felt really natural. And I just remember feeling really alive. Like I, even though I'm like a newbie at this, it came very intuitively. And then when I started to get to work with people in that coaching capacity, it was like I could just show up and be me and it would be helpful to people. So I trust that, whatever follows from here. Oh, also my parents, I think I mentioned that they hated the decision. They thought I was nuts. But when I think about, sort of this potential pivot point, I feel I find a lot of comfort in knowing that I have pivoted before in ways that were unexpected to myself and to others, and it turned out fine. So that's what came up.
And that process sounds very similar to how we make decisions, the spiritual decisions. Sometimes it looks like you're leaving with you're in this liminal place where you're not sure where you're going to go, but you know intuitively that there's something really important, that you feel secure about, the clarity around this. Sometimes the process of elimination has some value, what doesn't work. But the whole idea that you were willing to sit in this unknown place and just go for it with the curiosity. So much about spiritual practice is to have a curiosity about what you're going to discover about yourself. And the Dharma just offers so many avenues to be curious about, So that's the process sounds like something that you could utilize in this pivot point, like you said. Okay, one more. Juan Carlos.
Going off what Andrea said about pivoting, a thing that I've learned to live with is just the uncertainty. Like I learned that I think before making the decision and quitting my job, I learned that life is always uncertain. It's uncertain with a job, it's uncertain without a job. So
which uncertainty do you want to live in?
Which uncertainty do I want to live in? One where I know I know I won't be happy, or one where I might? And that's sort of like...
That's a great line.
So that's how I saw it. But now that I'm here and I have sort of boots on the ground, I also, right, like having run a financial advice operation, right, like my job was to know how much money you should pay for what, right, and how long it can take you to make that. And I look around and I look at the land, and I look at the Buddha hall, and I look at this house and the other house, and I think, how many years of worldly life? I could work my whole worldly life, my whole career, and never be able to live the way that you guys live. Never. people live their whole lives working, saving. They wouldn't come close.
And part of that is
You
that
know?
because we depend on the kindness of others.
And that is because
It's not a
yeah.
one-man show. It's not a one-woman show here. It's a dependent arising. Yeah.
And it's because of the Dharma. Yeah, it's because of the Sangha. It's because one person could never earn what 1,000 kind people can produce. And I think that gives me so much peace of mind, walking this path. Yeah.
It says a lot about the virtue of others. Okay, folks, let's just spend a minute or two here doing some digestion meditation. Any one or two points that came up from Ratthapala's wisdom, from what you heard from others, to really take to heart? That the Buddha's teachings are infallible. And there's always something of the Dharma that is specifically helpful at any point along the path for each and every one of us. And to trust and build that faith in the purity and the infallibility of the wisdom of the Buddha.